Welcome back to the Mom Files. I'm Hav,
And I'm Aleea.
and today we're going to dive into Matrescence, as long as I'm saying that correctly. Matrescence, to put it simply, is the functional and cognitive change that takes place during pregnancy. So the changes that continue to take place and adapt as the child grows and changes. So it's not just during pregnancy, but pretty much for the rest of your life after pregnancy. These changes encompass physical, hormonal, psychological, social, even spiritual changes that fundamentally transform a woman's identity. So we want to talk a bit about that and the core part of Matrescence that involves a profound shift in women's sense of self and identity as she integrates the experience of being a mother into her existing self and kind of how that affects mothers. We, of course, will talk about how it affected us and give a little bit more into what we know about it. But just to start off, I know that we've discussed in past episodes, our shift into motherhood and how it was a huge change for Aleea and especially for me, not only really creating a different life, but a deep shift in who I am personally, and what is important to me now and how that changed versus what was important to me beforehand. Of course, having kids will change that, but it's more integral than that. It's kind of like this feeling that like it's impossible not to let it shift. So yeah, we'll talk more about how for me becoming more confident, less willing to back down, really on anything that involves my children. So that's big scope on how I felt.
Yeah. And, one thing I'd like to add that I think is really interesting is that this isn't talked about that much. I know it's starting to be more, obviously, we just learned about it. But despite the fact that it is universal, it seems that because all these women go through it, um, and it's just interesting to me, it just shows that there is a huge gap in women's healthcare, especially versus men's, whether that's mental health, testing, research, like for cancer. I know that women just don't get they don't get the same medical attention. And so I think it is important that we keep pushing for more focus on this, just because the more we can give a name to it, it allows for it to be real and for other women to feel seen and heard too. I know, and maybe we'll talk about this in another episode later on, but it can happen with that HG, the throwing up, women that have like really severe throwing up. Like, I don't know how to pronounce it, so I don't want to say it, but they call it HG. And so we want to help reduce shame around it. So I do think I wanted to add that because I do think it's interesting that there are so many struggles around motherhood. It's just crazy that it feels like it's something everyone experiences, but it seems so new, especially in 2025. So with that said, Hav, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the science behind matrescence.
Let's talk about the science. So, I mean, just from what you said, Aleea, I think it's talked about in the point of like, oh, your body's about to change, right? Everybody's like, your life is about to change, right? But why?
Right.
So yeah, like Aleea said, we did dive in a little bit and do some research, and I do suggest that you all do the research as well, because we're really just going to hit the very, very high level parts of what changes in your body. We're just doing our best here, but we want to understand it better and figure you might as well. So, I mean, really, from what we found, the overarching changes, like we said, it's everything from brain to hormones to physicality and whatnot. But for example, we learned that your brain grows 4 times the size that it was. And it learns I guess your amygdala grows 4 times the size to help you learn all the new things in growing a child. But it also trims a lot of unimportant or non-crucial information, which creates what we know as mom brain or the mom fog. So if you feel like you're going crazy because before you were pregnant, you could remember, I don't know, every star on the star chart. I don't know. But now you're like, oh, what's a Sagittarius? There you go. Now you know it's unimportant. So your brain is cutting it out. But there's also shifts in hormones. So your oxytocin increases. And there's also a condition, it's called DMER, DMER, which basically it comes a lot more, it sounds like, after you have the baby, especially if you're nursing. But it's the dip in your dopamine that is caused by nursing, and the spike in oxytocin, which for a lot of nursing moms, if you ever feel maybe a little more depressed or have negative emotions, that's where that comes from. Also, the physicality, your whole body structure changes. Essentially, your lungs and your rib cage. So your rib cage expands 2 to 3 times so that your lungs can take in more oxygen. And then I'm sure most people are informed about this, but of course, your organs shift. So your pelvic floor changes, your organs move around. There's a lot that goes into the physical aspects. And we'll talk more on this, but really quickly, there's also the emotional part of Matrescence, like baby blues or PMAD, which affects about probably up to, if not more, 80% of mothers. So this is kind of what we're feeling of the emotional roller coaster, loving your baby, but crying at certain moments, not really knowing what's being affected or why you're feeling certain things. And then there's also the guilt and pressure because maybe your emotions aren't matching how you feel that you should as being a mom. You know, like we said, maybe you cry because you're depressed, but you don't understand why you're depressed because you have a beautiful no baby in front of you. So we can go further into that and we'll focus mostly on kind of what me and Aleea experienced and what we've seen from the women's perspective of Matrescence.
Yeah, it's funny because as you were, like, talking about those things, I was thinking about how I definitely experienced a lot of those, but I feel like I didn't realize I was experiencing a lot of those,
Mhm.
especially, like, in the early days of newborn phase. I do remember, well, definitely the crying, but I even the anger and stuff, and I know we've talked about that before, but it was like, I just felt it was because of other like, you aren't linking it to it being, like, a something that's happening with you and you. I was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's because people aren't doing what I need," or,
Right.
like, it's almost like the invisible labor. Like, I felt like I was blaming it on other things versus being like, "Hey, maybe this is, like, something I'm experiencing internally. Like, why am I
Right.
so." And I wouldn't say I was, like, rage, but I definitely felt an increase in, like, it was just easier for me to get angry. Like, I was agitated easier,
Yeah.
things like that. Definitely, it was easier. I mean, it's still easier for me to cry. I'm like, I cry
Yeah.
all the time now over, like, dumb stuff, like your weddings. I'm like, I will cry through an entire wedding just because it's
Literally.
so it is interesting. I think, yeah, it was just interesting as you were, talking about it, like how I was feeling. I don't know. I'm sure you felt the same.
Yeah. I mean, well, and I know I like during the research and during reading it, a lot of it really called out to me. I mean, I think because I'm 4 years, well, almost 4 years postpartum.
That's true.
So there's a lot of things that I recognize now that I'm like, oh, like I wasn't actually a horrible person. Like that really was the hormones. Yes, I was told that it was going to be the hormones. But when you're in it, it's really hard to like separate those things. So, like you said, like the anger and, like, for lack of better words, aggression that I felt, I thought, like, oh, maybe I'm just a bad mom. Like, I can't handle certain things or I can't handle my partner, like little things that like you don't realize,
Right.
like a lot of small things that my partner or even like Azzy being really difficult to put down to sleep would make me angry. Whereas like I feel like now where I am with my hormones actually more in place and I like am more aware of my body and what was going on, I would in this moment be able to step back and be like, she's just crying. Or like, we just need to adjust the sleep schedule or he just he's my husband, he needs attention. And we'll talk more about how this affects relationships, but I think that was one of the hardest things for me being like, where is this disconnect? Because I love my husband and I love my child, but like everything is making me sad or
Yes.
I won't even say just angry. There was things that I was like, this logically makes sense to me, but I'm
Mm.
gonna go cry about it. Like I feel like the world is ending. For what?
Yeah, and I do think, especially in the early stages, the sleep deprivation plays a role in that, like,
Mhm.
and then you add on the fact that you do have haywire, like, hormones, it's like yeah, but it
Well,
is
then not
funny, it's
say not to mention we both nursed. So with
right,
the DMER where like the letdown is
right, and
creating an imbalance in your oxytocin or your dopamine, and I know your baby does it too.
mhm,
We were the pacifiers. So they're constantly just messing with our emotions.
yeah,
But we
oh,
were never explained to why it would feel that way.
Yeah, and then it's so true, like, you just feel guilty and bad. Like, you feel
Mhm.
bad for feeling that way, but then it's like once, because even like you said, as you were talking about it, I instantly was like, I almost feel better, like, being like, "Oh, there was an explanation for why I felt the way that I did."
Right. I mean, I'll even say, like, the brain fog. I felt so dumb. I felt like with my boss, like, we would have conversations and my brain would just go blank on words, like, similar conversations that we had a million times before where I'm explaining a situation with a manager or, like, something, and my brain just went blank, and I remember being like, I'm gonna lose my job. Like, I can't even think of basic words right now. How am I supposed to keep up with having an infant and work full time when my brain literally stutters, like, constantly?
And I do think adding a career, like, going back to work and stuff does add an, because you already have this mental load that's just
Mhm.
exploded overnight when you get a baby.
Right.
Like, for me, it was like, it was crazy. I was like, I never realized how much, and I've said it before, how much time and stuff I had before a kid, but I'm like, it's just crazy how it wasn't even once he arrived, it felt like my time went away. It was just like, wow, there's so much stuff I feel like I need to do, especially when
Yeah.
you're wanting to hit certain milestones or blah, blah, making sure they're really smart or doing all this. It's like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is a ton of information. And then you add on work, and then you
Right.
add on making sure your partner's happy, and like all of this. And
Mhm.
it's just, there's so much that comes with it, and I agree. I think when you add in a career, or even if you aren't a working mom, that's okay too, but I'm like, it's just crazy the
Mhm.
mental load that just adds a whole 'nother layer of pressure.
Well, and we really can only speak from the work from home
Right.
mom situation because that's the only thing that we've known, and I will say my capabilities at work, mind you, I think, like, I can still do a lot of work, but the ability and, like, the capacity I had for multitasking at work before having Azzy, and of course, a lot of that now is because 'cause I'm constantly multitasking with, like, a toddler running around. Well, I won't say constantly, but you get my point.
Right.
Um, Adding in that, like, additional thing that my brain had to constantly be thinking about while working, like, my capacity load has decreased for
Right.
work. Granted, it's still pretty high, but it's a weird thing to take in all these different things, and there's literally no normalcy anymore
Right.
because the things I could do at work, I can't do anymore. I was not a very emotional person before Azzy. Now I'm emotional about everything. The logic out the window. Like, all these things that I am so used to being able to count on myself for is now I can't count on myself. I remember being like, "Am I gonna have to quit work and be a
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom?" Which we've spoken about in past episodes, and I probably would have been just fine and been really happy, but my career has been very important to me, and that was scary to me. But we're here. We survived, but yeah.
No, it is true, and I think even, the capacity definitely went down, and even for me, it was also the motivation. Like, I used to be
Mm,
so, like, I would wanna wake up and, like, get all this stuff done, and, like, and now my motivation and push for work just changed, and it's finally starting to come back, and I do think that comes when you finally start feeling more restful and, like, getting more into routine, and
yeah.
I do think the early phases, like, it is easy, like I've said before, it's easy to get caught up in just wanting to be a mom. But yeah, it is so, like, for me, I was like, wow, I used to be so work oriented, and now it's kind of the opposite. Like, I have to find little snippets to work versus
Mhm.
before it was like, let me find little snippets to not work.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is really interesting. And I think, and everyone's different. For me, because of Golden Goose, I did take less of a paternal leave,
Mhm.
and I do think that might have affected it too. Like, I felt like I was just stressed through the early stages trying to, yeah, but that was my choice. So again, not everyone does that, and I'm like, I should have made a different choice. However, I
Right.
do think that played a role in just being, or I don't know, I said parental, whatever. You know what I
I
mean? It played a role.
No, I think that's a really good point, and we can go in on how that is a social expectation because, I mean, I think you took less time than I did, but I had 4 months, and then I went part-time for 2 months. And I mean, okay, pause. They say I think it takes about 4 years for your body, for your hormones in your body to actually get back to, like, a standard after you have your baby. And I remember those going back to work in those first 2 months and even the first, like, year and thinking the same thing, being like, "My priorities for work, I don't care about projects. I don't care about getting recognition. I wanna
Right.
get my work done, and I wanna, like, be with my baby." But I think
Mhm.
that speaks to, like, the social thing, like, society should allow us to take more time off because our bodies were built to have that it's a maternal instinct. We are supposed to be locked in on baby.
Right.
So naturally, of course, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and of course, all I wanted to do was be with my baby. I'm finding more joy in work again and, like, being able to be like, "Okay, like, I'm doing these cool things with work." Um, Now that my body's a little bit more like, "Okay, she's not a baby anymore. She can go out into the world and, like, do things." But again, that's, like, the way our bodies were created to work. Clearly, our brains are shifting,
Yeah.
growing 4 times and cutting pieces off and changing your hormones that you literally go crazy for your baby.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you
But
have an
yeah,
identity shift. Like, it is. It's just that's it when it comes down to it, it's a full-blown identity shift. And it's funny because there's a lot of it's what we always say, everything that I've done as a mother is the exact opposite of thought I how I would mother. It's
right.
just, like, because I never expected the hormonal shifts, I didn't take into account any of this, I did only took into account adding a person to my life versus all the things that come with when you do add this person to your life,
Yeah.
especially when you give birth and stuff like that. Like, it's just, yeah, everything who I was before changed. It's
It's not
just,
just affecting your actions, but it's literally affecting you, like your body.
yes. Yeah, like my body just is different. And it was weird because I just didn't think that was not a change I anticipated. Like, I
Mhm.
anticipated and I think that's why when you hear people being like, "Oh, it's gonna be a big change," like, in my mind, I'm thinking, "Oh, it's a big change adding, maybe a couple new routines, things like that." Not a huge change. I wasn't thinking, like, friendships, priorities, just
Right.
how I view things, like, my values, like, all of that changed too, and that is something I wasn't expecting.
No, but that's a really good shift into, like, because I mean, we talked about the work relationship part of it,
Mhm,
right? But I know for me, there was a big shift in my relationship with everyone around me, but
mhm,
clearly with Tony, with my partner, and how I think, like I said, like, little things affected me differently. It was harder for me to see the things that he was doing and, like, honestly, it was harder for me to be grateful for the
mhm,
things that he was doing, even though looking back on it, I'm like, "How was I not grateful?" He was doing all these things, but it wasn't what I felt like I needed in the moment because
mhm,
my whole world was baby, so his
mhm,
whole world should be baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how or at least how it felt my
mhm.
brain worked. Um, so I think we could definitely dive into, like, and honestly, like, you're honestly still in it. I mean, not that I'm not in it, but I
But you're a
think
few years ahead, right, you've had a little more time. No, I definitely still feel in
yeah.
it, but even after a year, I already feel like the fog is starting to lift, I
Mhm.
feel more connect like, but I agree with you, and I think you made a good point when it comes to Tony. It's like with Ty, like, there is an imbalance, like, you feel like there's all this and we've talked about it in a couple episodes ago with all the invisible labor, like, you feel like all this stuff isn't being met, but it's just you just aren't viewing things the same way that they're viewing things, and it's hard to grapple that when you're going
Yeah.
through it.
And I will say those feelings are valid. I'm not saying that, like, us as moms or like I was wrong for feeling that, but looking back on it, it's easier to be like, okay, this is why you were feeling that way. When he came to love on you and touch you, it wasn't that you didn't want to be touched by him. You just were touched out and you needed some
Yeah.
space. And I think we both recognize that now. But I think in a past episode, I literally said he told me he did not think that I liked him. There was a time when Azzy was a newborn and an infant where he just kind of gave me space because even things that, like, I'm not saying I was snapping at him for everything, but he could tell that I just, like, was not, like,
Right.
"You wanna give me a hug, and I just want you to take the baby and give me a second, but I don't want you to take the baby because the baby needs to be here with me because," and then you feel like you're going crazy, and then your
Yeah.
relationship is affected because if your husband can't like recognize that as well, then, or even if they can recognize that, imagine how they're feeling because they're feeling rejected and like
Yes.
they can't do more. It's a whole.
And I think for us too, because this isn't going to apply to everyone because they weren't co-sleeping, but
Right.
co-sleeping also adds a whole nother layer because it's not only are you, especially if you're like Hav and I who did exclusively breastfeed, you're touched out all day and then you're touched out all night. And it's really hard to find time to be like, let's be together, let's love on each other. Cause it's like, once you do get that time, it's like, you know what? I really don't want anyone touching me or looking at me and I do think too, with that, I will say for me, my body image has also played a role where I'm like, don't look at me, don't touch me, just keep, you are over there, like keep the lights off, like everybody just, yeah.
If you tore, if you got stitches, like there's
Right.
so much that leads into that. But I know, especially for me, like I know Tony's love language is touch. And
Right.
I know how hard that was for him because the last thing that I wanted was extra touch.
I was like, yeah.
And I
I
can't
mean,
like
I definitely don't. I don't even if it's like a nice, like, "Hi, pat on the back," it's like, honestly, I really don't want that. And I get it. I feel bad, but it's like,
literally just
not I wanna be left alone.
like we have to laugh about it because it's honestly kind of sad, to be
Yeah,
fair. Like I want to want that touch.
yeah, and you feel bad because you feel like a bad wife.
Mhm.
You feel like you're worried, like, is this going to lead to a
I'm
marital
literally
problem?
having flashbacks, I think, of sending you voice memos and being like, "I feel like I don't know how to be a wife and a mom right now. I
Right.
really don't." And I am thankful that Tony and I had such a strong relationship before because it like, even being so close and loving each other so much, that first year was so hard. It's not
Yes.
like we fought
No.
or, like, hated each other, but it was
No.
just like the
There's a
affection
disconnect.
is not being given the way that it should be.
Mhm. Yeah, and then that disconnect, and then it adds to other things. I feel like it's just like anything. It's this feeling and this change is just a domino effect, especially as you get deeper. And I think that's why I'm glad you brought up that it can take up to 4 years plus because like I said, I'm only a year in. I still feel this way. I still
Mhm.
have moments where I feel like I'm struggling to be, a good wife, a good parent, a good friend because there's just areas that shift or I don't have the energy or the capacity to give to it like I used to.
I mean, the friend thing,
Mhm.
I know for me, I felt like a horrible friend, especially because the only like, when I was talking to my friends, I just wanted to get shit off my back.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry I just keep talking about the baby, but this is literally my whole life, and I just wanna cry a little bit, and I just wanna scream a little bit, and you're my person, so,
Mhm.
like, please, but also please don't hate me because I know that I don't have the capacity to be like, "Okay, my turn to listen," you know? Like, I try really hard, and I know we're honestly probably both better at it than we thought or are thinking,
But still,
but it's hard to know the kind of person that you should be
or
and
want to be, and you're just
or
not
what
hitting
yeah,
that mark. Yeah.
and you're not. And I won't even 4 years in, still not perfect, I still get touched out, and but I'm more able to be like, "Yo, Tony, I just need to say, it's not you.
Mhm.
I'm touched out." And he's more able to be like, "Oh, you're overstimulated. Can I give you a hug?"
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
and I think too, whether you're a work from home mom or a stay at home mom, if you're home a lot, you're also alone a lot. And it's hard because then you are bottling up these feelings. You don't really have anywhere to go with them. And so it's like Hoff said, sometimes then you're like spewing on your, couple friends or whatnot. But I'm like, that might be the only time in a week that you've been able to have any sort of feeling or sharing of that feeling.
yeah.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean, that could be for moms who go to work too,
yeah,
because I'm sure a lot of moms don't wanna vent
that's
to their coworker, you know what I'm saying? So it goes a lot, but especially for, like, I know you're pretty isolated and I'm pretty
true.
isolated, so I know a lot of, like, a lot of my big emotions with Tony were like, "Oh, he's going out to be with the guys, and he deserves to go out and be with the guys, but you're the only adult that I have to talk to that,
Right.
like, in person in real life, and so I don't wanna be mad that you're leaving me, but I'm pissed that you're leaving and that but at the same time, yes, please go have fun with your friends, but, like,
Yes.
you.
100%. And I think it's we talked about this with invisible labor. It's especially like when Ty would get home, you wanna just, like, spew and, like, hand over the
Mm,
baby and stuff, but then you're also reminded, like, they also have had a long day and they're still need but you're kinda, like, jealous because 'cause you're like, "Excuse me?" But then I'm
right.
like, I understand because I have done that type of job where I've gone out and worked for, 12 hours, and you do just wanna come home and be like, "Leave me
Yeah.
alone." So it
It's
is
really
hard.
easy to let resentment build for that,
Mhm.
especially when you're not able to, like, logically step out. Now I'm like, would have I wanted to be the one leaving the house? Probably not. But in that moment, you're thinking grass is always greener. I'm stuck here with the baby and you get to leave the house. And I know we talk about with invisible labor, but with matrescence too, there's that feeling of the or like the load, the mental load, the physical load that literally happens overnight. And whether Tony was there to help me or not, it felt like it was all my job because
Yeah.
your brain is literally telling you this is your fucking job. So
Yes. It's
that
easy to
resent like
kinda get caught up in your own feelings.
yeah, and then feeling like shit for resenting somebody that you shouldn't be resenting because you don't actually resent them, but it feels like you do. But in reality, you have no idea what you're feeling.
Yes. 100%. And I think that kinda leads us into like we said, there's a ton this is just like a very skim level of the top of your feelings because you honestly, this masterson, it affects every aspect of your life, whether it's your
Mm,
career, your identity, your family, whatever it is. But I think then, like, how can we navigate this? Like it's
mhm,
something that obviously we're talking about. So it's like, how are we able to kind of navigate the before the baby version, who you are now, and how, maybe that transition isn't just instant. And I know
mhm.
we have talked about this a couple episodes ago. So definitely listen to the Who I Am Now, Rediscovering Yourself After Kids, because I do think we touch on this point quite a bit. But to kind of just add on to it, I do think this is a really good time to revisit and redefine who you are and how you feel about things. Because, like we just have been talking about, what mattered to you before most likely has shifted. It may have become clearer, or maybe you're really confused on where you're at. And so, this is a great time to redefine your values, who you are, your new self. And you might not quite know yet, but it's just time to start thinking about it. Like, maybe and you don't have to choose one thing or another. There could definitely be an overlap of who you were before into now. But I just think it's a great time to find small ways to, even if it's 5 minutes, to find ways to reconnect or figure out like, "Hey, that actually isn't something I'm interested in anymore. This is fits me better now."
Well, I think those are all good points in, like, finding but I do wanna kind of draw back for a second and
Yeah.
point out, like, that newborn stage, and when you're first, like, really deep in it, I honestly just wanna say sit in it.
Mhm.
Just let yourself feel the things. Try your best, of course, especially, like, your spouse and work and friendships and stuff to, like, realize what is being affected by the actual relationship versus what's being affected by, like, your hormones and your, physicality that's changing and whatnot. But, yeah, sit in it for a second and let grieve maybe I know for me, when I was trying to decide if I was gonna quit work and do that stuff, like, really think about how it is making you feel and try not to dwell on how it would have made you feel before. And then as you get used to being a new mom and you get used to the changes, because things change even with
Yes.
you with baby, but with yourself, I feel like every, like, 4 or so months as the baby changes, you change.
For sure.
Um, so yeah, kinda just sit in it and be okay with the different emotions and try to talk them out, especially if you are with a partner or you're getting help with friends and whatnot. And then, yeah, sit down and kinda try to navigate what you are feeling now and where you can make it meet what you wanted beforehand or what
Yeah.
you see for your future.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, when I say, like, sit down, I don't mean right. I mean, especially if you are really early in the newborn phase, you probably haven't even realized that this is something you're going like, I definitely didn't, and so but it is a good time, if you can find snippets for little moments, like, even if that means taking a little longer shower just so that you can
Mhm,
feel, just whatever the feelings are feeling 100%. So I
mhm.
think you make an excellent point. Yes, this is something like it will change and whatnot, but it's good to have an idea that, hey, maybe you aren't the problem. It's just something that you're experiencing and you just haven't quite. grappled. Like, it's normal to feel everything at once, and you should feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And
that's
being okay with your relationship changing. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's gonna change in, like, in a way that means that you're not gonna have the relationship anymore, but recognizing maybe you take notes of, like, how certain things are making you feel. We talk about this all the time. Take little notes, write down little jots. What made you angry today? What made you happy today? What made you sad? Like, little things. It's like when you go to your doctor, right? And they're like, "Oh, how long have these headaches been happening? What caused them to happen?" And they're like, "Okay, now I want you every time you get a headache, write down what you drank that day, what you ate that day." Not that specific, but like, okay, I was nursing the baby and you came up and whatever. And then talk to your spouse about that and say, "Hey, this is how I'm being affected right now. How can we work so that like we can still have that relationship and physical touch and things, but in a way in a time that I'm not maybe not gonna snap quite as quickly."
Yeah.
Things like that.
And 100%, your relationship will change, but I think that's a great point. Just communicate that as you no matter what stage of parenthood or even if you don't have kids yet, communication is so big because it will help you both feel heard or allowing you to be heard if because sometimes we forget, sometimes our partner, like my partner, Ty, he's not a huge communicator. So sometimes I forget that I have to ask and, pry a little more. And sometimes we forget that's how, they also have feelings and are going
Yeah.
through stuff. So it's just a good way to open up
I
the
think that's
conversation together.
yeah, that's a good note too, in that your communication will change or should, maybe should. It depends. I don't know your communication style, but I know for me and Tony, when we get upset about things, we separate ourselves so that we can really think through what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, how to communicate it without um, hurting each other. We both can have very set thoughts. So that's how before Azzy, that's really how, honestly, we didn't argue. That's how we figured out a lot of things. A lot of the times we were able to step outside of ourselves and be like, okay, like it was me, whatever. But after Azzy, there's that stepping away and not talking about it just then resulted in us not talking about anything. And then like a year and a half in being, having that I won't even say argument, but that conversation where we realize we're both having the same feelings and we
Mhm.
haven't communicated about it. And now he feels like a bad dad or that I don't want him to be a dad. And then I feel like a bad wife and that I'm the reason that he's not, like there's like these integral parts where the communication that we had before, it worked great before. It
Right.
didn't work now. So now we have to be a little bit more like, okay, I saw how you did that. Let's talk about it because I
Mhm.
disagree. Or, sorry, I snapped at you for the 50th time today. I'm really touched out. I probably should have told you that before you got home.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And even, if you're going through this, I mean, I even think explaining Matrescence to them. Because, I
Mhm.
mean, if it's new to us, it's going to be new to them. And they might not be realizing that you are experiencing these specific hormone changes and these changes. So it could be a good time to talk about it. And then it allows them to be like, yeah, I noticed, maybe we can figure something out that works for both of us. Because, I mean, it is real and we should be allowed to feel these feelings. It's like what Hav said, it's okay to normalize who you're becoming and it's still unfolding and it's okay. Like you don't have to just because you're feeling this doesn't mean you have to like push it under. Like you're allowed to feel it
Yeah.
and you're allowed to go through all these like feelings. It's normal.
Yeah.
And I do think that actually leads to that with the communication. I also think something that we as moms can do is also support each other through this by continuing to talk to each other, normalizing the messy parts, letting go of that toxic positivity. It has a place for sure, but there are moments where
Mhm.
it's like, these open conversations are important because it's not every moment of motherhood is pretty, and that's
Mm.
okay.
I can only hear that you're going to get through this so many times. It'll get better. Okay. When also, can I get a little bit of a break right now?
Mhm.
Because 4 years in, it'll get better. But also, like, it won't. It sucks. It sucks. It feels like you're being tortured right now. For
And
sure.
we should be allowed to have those moments of like, hey, this sucks. Doesn't take away from the fact that you love your kid or you love being a mom, but sometimes, yeah, the messy parts, they're there and we should be able to embrace them. And I know other moms are also going through it. So,
Mhm.
definitely don't. And if you don't have mom friends like in person, feel free to talk to people online. You could even message us. We are
Mhm.
always open to talk and rant about mom
I'm
life.
very obsessed with children and this and what it's like to be a mom. No, but seriously, I think that's true. But I also think every always gotta start. Everybody's friendship and relationship is different. But I know for me, none of my friends had kids, and you all were extremely supportive once I just opened up and said, like, this is how I feel. And instead of getting the expected things that I thought of, like, oh, like, well, just like being like, I just don't get it. You all were a lot more supportive and asked me questions. And even when as far as like looking things up, I know half of my friends' TikTok feeds were new mother. None of them, except for you, now have kids. So it's like there is a lot more support than I think at
Yes.
least than I expected. And I think the life is a duality of emotions. I mean, we literally just explained that in Matrescence, like when you're nursing, you feel this love for this child and you're so like enthralled with them, but then you feel negative emotions and like are more susceptible to being angry.
Yeah.
Like it's literally just in our blood, in our DNA to have dual emotions and to be happy, you can be sad. You
Yeah.
can be grateful for your friends, but then also be like really upset that you don't get to do the things that you do with them anymore because now you have a baby.
Yes. There's duality in feelings, and we as humans aren't one sided. Like, we have so
Mm-mm.
many different pieces to us. And so you can experience multiple things at the same time. And I think before we wrap up, that you do make an excellent point is at least for me, I'm a pretty private person. I have a hard time opening up and asking for help, but it's like I've never, at least me personally, I've never had a friend that's come up to me or someone that's like, I need help. And I'm like, ugh, I don't want to help.
Right.
Like, it's just natural for us to want to help our friends and stuff. So it's like, don't like, even though it can be scary, it's like what Hob said, you might be surprised the help that you will get or the support you will get just by opening up a little bit,
Hmm.
because a lot of our friends and family want to be there for us. They just don't know how, because
Yeah.
they don't realize that we're struggling with something.
Yeah. And if you do find that you are lacking that village or that support and we're completely off base, I do know also for me, I didn't post in the pages because private person, and it was just really hard for me to be like, oh, here's to strangers. But I did join a lot of Facebook pages for moms. And it was really nice actually seeing other moms post and be like, this is what's going on. And then I was like, oh, like this really is going on with other people. It's not just me. Which is helpful knowing that you're not in it alone, even if it's not somebody you know.
100%. I think that's excellent point, because I'm not someone that would post publicly either on like a Facebook page, but I do like reading comments and feeling supported from afar.
Right.
Sometimes you're reading it and you're like, "Oh, I do feel." You just don't feel alone, because you're like, "Oh, there are other people experiencing this with me."
Yeah. And then people commenting being like, oh, that was totally me. This is when it got better, or like these are things that you can look forward to, or like even I know for like sleep and stuff there was moms who were like, I hate to say it, but like that was my kid until they were 5, but once they hit 5 like it was like a whole new world. So there's a lot to be said about just camaraderie.
Yes.
And as much as we don't like posting things and we're private, here we are doing a podcast. Just
Yes. Well, it's one of those things that it's hard, but see, we decided it was time to put ourselves out there so that other moms also don't feel alone, because it really can feel like a very lonely journey.
mm-hmm.
And camaraderie helps a ton, because I know, even like, especially when I was in the thick of it and I was so tired, and Hav was like, I get it. And it was like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one that's crying in the middle of the night, feeling
Yeah.
alone in the darkness with my baby.
Well, and I don't, you can tell me if it helped or not, but I think it helped instead of me being like, it's okay, you'll get through it. I was like, no, dude, this fucking sucks. Like
Mhm.
you're being tortured right now. I love you.
Right. But it does help, because you're like, okay, it did. Yeah. Because I didn't feel alone. Even if you weren't going through it at that same moment, I was like, okay, Hob did go through something similar. And I think
Hmm.
it is a good reminder. All motherhood journeys, again, are different. Maybe you're really lucky and your kid slept through the night from day one.
Hmm.
Amazing. Not us, but amazing. And then maybe you're someone whose kid is still not sleeping at 3 or 4. It's a reminder that no matter where you're at, you are where you're at. Like, you don't
Mhm.
have to feel behind or like you're the only one because it's just we're all so different and it will change.
Yeah.
And so I think just to kind of like wrap it up, when you put it all together, the brain science, the body changes, the emotional and identity shifts, like Sense is huge. It's a new lens for motherhood. And I do think naming it gives us power. It allows
Mhm.
us to remind ourselves we're not broken, we're transforming. Um, it's messy, but it's natural and it's a necessary stage of life. So I think it's a good time to shift from kind of a I should have this figured out to this is where I'm at. This is a natural part of this motherhood journey and finding compassion for yourself in the process. Like
Mhm.
embrace where you're at. You know, motherhood can be lonely, but we hope that this topic helps you feel less lonely. But if this is something that you are currently feeling, we both get it. We're honestly still in the thick of it. Like Hop said, she's 4 years out. Doesn't mean she doesn't still have these moments and is still experiencing. So, this is kind of your reminder that you don't have to clean up your story before you tell it. You are allowed to have all the messy middle. You are allowed to feel angry or sad or confused, whatever it is. And that's kind of what makes this life and the motherhood journey beautiful. At least for me, I think it's nice. It's a reminder, like, we don't need to fix everything and we can feel
Yeah.
validated in kind of how we feel.
Yeah. I agree 100%. The only thing that I'll add is my motto, my slogan. It's my first time doing this.
Mhm.
I just became a mom, and I'm gonna use that until until my child probably forever. I don't even say
Even if
18.
we had 5 kids.
It's still my first time. It's my first time. I might know a little bit more about, like, potty training now, but every new stage, especially with Azzy, every new stage that she goes through, it's my first time.
Yep.
The
And
second
even
baby,
Yep.
okay, that might but it's my first time.
But I was gonna say it's still your first time because that kid's probably gonna be different. So
Mhm.
it's like, it doesn't matter. We could have 5 kids, we could have 100 kids. Most likely, it's gonna be the first time you're going through it with that one. Yeah,
Just doing my best.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so with that, stay tuned with us. The next episode, we are going to be covering why savoring every moment makes me want to scream. This is something we touched on briefly a few episodes ago because I said it, and I hated hearing it, and yet I still said it because
Because
obviously
it's
there's
true, but also
it's so annoying to hear.
makes me mad.
Yeah. So we will be diving into all of that next week. Stay tuned. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.